What is going on, everyone? Commodore Laz here. Elbaph has been on an incredible run of chapters since its beginning, and it doesn't feel like it's going to stop anytime soon, but it feels like something's been missing with this arc. I mean, granted, there's been so much amazing stuff that's been going on, but there's just one thing that's been missing. One character in particular that hasn't been seen since Kaido's debut. That's how long they've been away from the manga. And it feels like today's the perfect time to talk about that individual, but I'm not going to talk about them alone. Today, we're going to be talking about it with two good individuals, two good brothers of mine who love this character just as much as me, man. The Kaiso, the Mad Monk Urouge. And join me today talking about this, we have Sake join the channel for the very first time, and my tag team partner, King Recon. Gentlemen, welcome on the board. What are we saying?
Laz, it's an honor to be here. Urouge is going to be here soon, and it's an honor to be here because I know you've been on the channel a few times now, Laz, and we've talked about this quite a bit, this moment, talking about Urouge, our guy, so it's a pleasure.
Likewise for me. You are two of my favorite people to discuss the peak with, so I'm so excited to be here. First and foremost, because I haven't had much of an opportunity to be able to talk about Elbaph with other individuals, so this is going to be a blast. We're coming off of a really hot stretch of chapters, so excited for some peak, man.
I mean, like, listen, this arc has been like, I mean, we're going to get into the individual in a moment, but just to talk about like the current events that have been going on right now with this arc. I mean, like, how are we feeling so far, like, with Elbaph? There's been a lot of arcs that started really well. Rogue Dog book the middle, a term that me and Recon would usually use here and there, and then the ending depends on how you're feeling, you know, for the whole entire thing. I've been so elated what I've been seeing with Elbaph and just what this arc has been offering to us so far, and like, just off the perception of what we've been getting right now at the moment, I generally think this has a chance of being one of the best arcs in the entirety of One Piece. I want to know from the both of you guys just how we're feeling so far about Elbaph in the early stages. Even though it kind of sounds weird saying early stages because we're like, what, 10 past chapters already into the arc, but just how are we feeling about it?
You know, I thought it started off a little slow, but it's been absolutely peak ever since. The first few chapters, you know, Coach, I know you were there. We did the chapter ranking stream from the community, and the first 3 chapters of Elbaph were ranked pretty low. I think they were the 3 lowest chapters of last year. But I would say ever since the very beginning, it's been just absolutely amazing, especially with the last chapter that we just had with chapter 1142. I mean, that was just, you know, you go back to the mural with 1138, and now we got Loki doing things. I mean, it's heated up so quickly and so well that, I mean, I've been saying for a long time that Elbaph will be my favorite arc once it's done, because I'm a big Usopp guy, big Urouge guy, which is why we're here.
Facts.
And I mean, there's probably going to be some Nolan hype at some point, some Manel hype. Maybe we'll get into some of that as well. So this arc, it's already at a really good point, but I know there's so much more to come. Big Mom might show up, right? There's so much more that I'm just like, it's going great. That's all I can say.
Now, I'm a Skypiea tart, and this arc is probably the one that's reminded me most of how I felt when I was first reading through Giant Skypiea. Like Dak was just talking about with the first couple of chapters, that was actually really high up for me last year. Dak can attest for the chapter rankings because of how it made me feel like Jai or like early One Piece, those early mystery chapters in the arc with Rodo and them doing their thing, and the Straw Hats, of course, trying to figure out just what was going on. Once you get into Elbaph itself, from that point onward, it's been all of like what makes One Piece so special. Been the emotional moments, the hype moments, the lore moments, the ankle-breaking moments, fantastic character introductions. Dak brought up the mural. That's a top 10 chapter in the series for me.
Yes, sir.
Like, it's been so incredibly special that I don't know how we're going to continue to elevate it, but because every time I say that, the next run just continues to go in and continue to give us more greatness. This arc has been really special for a multitude of reasons. But the stuff that we're exploring with dreams, with war, with a mythology, so many different aspects of it just have me so stoked for when the Mad Monk comes down and we start then having the supernova intrigue that every single post-time skip arc has had so far. And so I can't wait for the Urouge character exploration that we're eventually going to get, considering how well done Loki has been so far and Shamrock has been so far from like an intriguing standpoint. So when Urouge gets in the middle of all this, forget about it, man. We're in for an all-timer.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Like,
and
go ahead,
real quick, if I can, I just one thing I got to piggyback off of there, Coach. So you brought up how this has made you feel a little bit like Skypiea, and one of the things about Skypiea that I absolutely loved is, you know, we all talk about Oda's world building, and I think a lot of the time we mean that in terms of, you know, just the way the whole world's interconnected, and like if we defeat somebody, they come back, right? Like the world is very like full in that way. But one of the things that I love that Skypiea did is world building in the sense of just kind of the awe of the new place that we're going to, right? Like, oh, there's an island in the sky. Like, how do these clouds work? Like, well, there's a chunk of land. How'd that get up there? Like, that whole, wow, like this world, it has a lot of wonder to it. And the thing about Elbaph that I've said in almost every stream is Oda's doing a really good job of letting us know, like, the scaling of the place. Like, hey, you're on a giant island. This castle is 500 times your size, you know, and so whenever we're going through the castle, like Roto has to carry them, like stuff like that, like the way that, and how big the Atom Tree is, like we see how big Loki is relative to Haradin, but then we see how big the Atom Tree is, and in that scaling of it, that like awe-inspiring feeling, like that has come back in full force in a way that I wouldn't say it hasn't been around at all since pre-time skip, but I feel like this is one of the best examples of that awe-inspiring world that Oda's created that we've had in the post-time skip. Like Wano had a lot of cool sights and stuff like that, like seeing the waterfall come down the side of the you know, the border, and seeing the capital, like that was like beautiful to see. But like I said, this is just awe-inspiring in the sizing of it and how legendary this tree is. It's thousands of years old from the first world. Like, man, like Oda's doing a great job.
He's just been like, I don't know how I'm still stunned at the fact that this guy is doing all this, but like, for 1,142 chapters, soon to be 1,143 when we come back from the break week. I mean, this guy has just been on an unreal run since, what is it, July, August of 1997, Recon, just to make sure.
Yeah, dude. I think it's July 22nd, 1997.
To be other precise, right? The same
yep.
year Stone Cold was going crazy, man, when he started off his hot run and stuff. But obviously, of course, the topic of today's video and stuff to go into the stuff with Elbaph, it's got to be about this individual that has been seen a few times here or there on the channel and stuff. The Mahdi Monk, of course, one angel, you know, gimmick and stuff going on, missing wing and stuff and everything. It doesn't really matter too much. Today's topic, of course, going on Urouge, the Mad Monk, the Kaiso, and everything. Guys, we have not seen Urouge in the story of One Piece. Going back, and I want to make sure with our numbers. Chapter 795 with Kaido's debut in the story. You know, we hit him with the Namu, fell off, and then everything that happened from there. He's a character who I've always been very interested in. Someone, of course, you know, to the point where I'm buying like figures and stuff for him, even if they're falling apart before me and everything. But he's a character that is someone that has had my interest for the longest of time. He's the eldest of the Supernova. We know that he has the lowest bounty, so he's someone that's kind of relatively new. Or if there's like subtle reasons for it and stuff. I know there's a lot of play with the numbers when it comes to his bounty, kind of similar to that with Zoro, and maybe kind of like hints towards like his whole like religion and stuff, and like just so many things about it too. The fact that he's possibly like half Skypiea and half Birka, if his like childhood picture is something to note going from the SBS is, and you know, whether we accept it as definitive like canon knowledge or not, listen, if Oda's saying it, it's definitely canon stuff, and I feel like those are things we're going to be factoring in eventually at some point in time. When is that some point in time? Because now that we're in the final saga, it feels like we're gearing up eventually for what that final war is going to be, that big war for the One Piece itself. Obviously, you don't want to throw a character into a situation where, you know, they're kind of getting in the way of things that we want to see, but Urouge is somebody that we do want to see. That's why we're in this call here today to talk about him and everything. Why do you think it is that Oda is waiting this long to have Urouge kind of be delved into in the series? Is this something that he's been purposely doing so for the sake of, you know, the right time, right place? Or do you think it's just like, what do you make of it, guys?
I'd probably say similar to how in Egghead, it took us a very long time to get context. Like once we got chapter 1064 that showed that the Void Sentry is actually from the future, a lot of things made sense, right? Like the reason why we haven't seen the ancient weapons is because that would have spoiled that reveal for us. Like obviously these things would probably look futuristic, and that would have spoiled the fact that the Void Sentry is from the future. So I feel like with an Elbaph that is so going to be so supremely focused on stuff like dreams, but more on a similar type of level, it's also going to be focusing a lot on a bunch of different religions and a concept of creation and mythology, and I feel like that's where I feel Urouge is going to probably have the coolest exploration in that regard, because obviously we've had a lot of really cool explorations with Capone, with Law, with Bonnie, with all of these different supernovas that we've seen throughout the course of the time skip. But with him in particular, it really does feel like it's gonna be a match made in heaven, specifically because of what you were just talking about with like Birka and the sky. We still haven't seen the astral realm, right? Like the top. So we don't know if that's gonna have a connection to the individuals of like a Skypiea or of Birka or things of that nature. And so I'm really excited to see from a lore standpoint more on the Urouge, which is why I think Oda's holding off on it. And when eventually we do see, we're like, that's why he's been holding off this whole time, because he didn't want to spoil a reveal, or maybe him being introduced or reintroduced here to be explored further would go along with the themes of the arc, just like how Bonnie was perfect for the themes of Egghead, how Capone was perfect for the themes of Whole Cake. So I feel like with Capone's character, when we see it explored specifically with his with the religious elements and how we know that's going to be explored within this arc, when all of that comes to play, that's going to be the reason why Oda's held off on Urouge for this long.
There's a really big reason why as soon as the arc starts, we see a bunch of fake gods, right? We see the sun god, the ear god, and right away, we probably already had the suspicion, like, oh, those aren't going to be actual gods, those are just titles. And then we see it's just like a giant rabbit, and then it's just Roto and stuff, right? Who does that tie to? Enel, like directly, right? Because he was called a god, but even for Gonfall, that was just a title, but Enel was kind of taking it seriously, right? That was that entire kind of situation. And so now when we're talking about Urouge, well, if it seems like he's from Birka, and so he probably knows a thing or two about Enel and what happened, because also Urouge, I think, is the oldest supernova, right? I think, or he's up there. Yeah. And so, so he's been around for a while, and Birka was destroyed, I think, 8 years ago. So, he would have had a lot of experience with it back then. So I think a big reason why he's been, held off for this entire time is because Oda's been waiting to get to this entire god, situation. Like, he's been waiting to come to another place where there's all these fake gods, and we can learn more about kind of like religion in One Piece and how they came to be, and now with Sun God Nika, how that religion came to be. And I think it's the same thing, because now whenever Enel comes in, whenever Urouge comes in, maybe we're gonna learn, maybe Nika wasn't truly a god. It's just he's kind of like Luffy and became worshipped as a god. And then we're learning, oh wow, that's really how that religion started. And then at what point, back in the past, and because we already heard from the first world, right, the sun god appeared after the enslaved prayed and they touched the forbidden sun. So I think there's a lot of stuff there that is going to tie to the Enel and Urouge situation, so Oda's had to wait. And also on the mural, this is something that I'm going to bring up in my mural video that should have been out weeks ago, but it's going to come out very soon. But on the mural, the conveyor belt system in the bottom right, that looks identical pretty much to the mural or the hieroglyphs that Enel saw in his cover story, right? The conveyor belt literally looks the same.
It's exactly the same.
And so, you talked about like with some of the themes of Egghead with high tech stuff, and like Oda had to wait to reveal some of the ancient weapon stuff because it was tied to the Void Century. It's kind of similar here too, where like he had to wait to get to some of this high tech lore stuff from the past to bring Enel back, because Enel went to the high tech city, and so he had to wait very long for that. And Urouge is going to have to come back when Enel comes back. So I think all of that stuff, the history of the moon, how the ancient kingdom started, how the legend of Sun God Nika started. All that stuff is what Oda's been waiting for.
I think of all these things and stuff, right? And it's like, it's hard for me to accept that like Urouge is gonna have like a small part to play in the final saga, given the fact of like how important like the things of like the sky races are going to be, especially when it comes to like the moon now being a thing too, and then the androids and all that other stuff that's going on, the automatas and everything. So it's like I have a hard time believing like he's going to have just a small role to play in the grand scheme of One Piece. Now with the mural, knowing how important like the sky races, again, seeing their involvement's going to be after. But for us as the individuals, as the consumers, as the readers, experiencing the story week in and week out, what would we say like our expectations are for Urouge in the final saga? Do we expect him to have like a role that's going to be massive in the sense of like what we got with Law, where we got this extensive flashback about him, getting to understand his person, and not just only understanding who he is, but just opening up the world of One Piece even more, kind of like with him wanting to become a doctor, just everything that happened there with him? Or do we think that's going to be somewhere similar to like with Bonnie, where it's like it's more of a personal thing, and while it may have something that's going to go directly towards the story and make some kind of impact, it's going to be more on the personal note when it comes to Rouge's character versus really expanding things? But what kind of expectations would you have for Urouge given all of that stuff that we could get from him, or just from whatever we can conjure?
The interesting thing about Urouge is that so far he's kind of seemed tied to Blackbeard, or like he likes Blackbeard because of that line after Marineford or whatever, where he said, keep an eye on Teach, he's going to be the eye of the storm for a while or whatever.
Yep.
But at the same time, Luffy's the one who defeated Enel. And so if there is a backstory with Urouge and Enel where, Enel destroyed Birka, and maybe that's why they're the fallen monk pirates, as, they fell from Birka and they're now on the Blue Sea and all that stuff. So, and also, remember, Urouge frowned at Raijin Island. And so that gave an idea, like, so he probably doesn't like lightning or whatever, probably because of Enel. And so I've always wondered, does Urouge even know that Luffy beat Enel? Because it's not like news comes from the Sky Islands down to the Blue Sea like that, right? Like, they don't even know those islands exist. And so I've always wondered, well, maybe whenever Urouge finds out that Luffy beat Enel, that's going to completely change his mind. Like, oh my God, are you the real sun god? Like, what's going on? But since he's been tied to Blackbeard before this, I think it's a pretty interesting juxtaposition. I would imagine that he's gonna, once he finds out who Luffy, really is, what he's done, then he's gonna side with him. And then throughout the final war, I don't know exactly what he's gonna do, but he's definitely gonna have a role to play there. And I think it also depends what happens with Enel also, whenever Enel returns. We got to figure that out also. But in general, I do think Urouge is going to have a pretty big role to play because, like we were just talking about before this, Oda's been saving him for so long, and he has a lot of work to do to catch up, kind of. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned Law. Like, Law's had so much build up, so much backstory, so much focus. Like, we could reasonably not see Law for like 100 or 200 chapters, but we know he's going to come back and do something big. Like, he's going to be in the final war. He's going to be relevant. We don't need to see him for a while because of the build up. But Urouge has the opposite problem, where it's like, okay, well, now Oda's got to make him really, really matter. Make him stick around for a while. Like, give him a some purpose. I feel like. I don't think we're just gonna have a cool Urouge story here and then we're done with him. Like, I can't see that happening. I think it feels like the Supernova, for the most part, maybe sans Hawkins or whatever, are going to be very relevant. So
I'm right there with you in regards to, I think because Oda has so much catching up to do in regards to him, it's going to be similar to a Bonnie situation where a lot of the heavy lifting is going to have to be done in Elbaph. So Elbaph's probably going to be the heaviest arc on Urouge. And then what happens after that will have to depend, like Dak was just saying, on his potential connection to either a Luffy or an NL. Because once we get into that final saga, if you're not associated with one of the major powers, it's going to be really difficult to have screen time on you. Like, the Revolutionary Army is going to be big in that final saga, the Yonko is going to be really big, the Marines going to be really big, and the Celestial Dragon is going to be really big. So if you're not a part of one of those major factions and or players within the final war, it's going to be difficult to get some screen time. So I feel like at some point in time within this arc, either Urouge is going to find himself aligning with Luffy, and or, like Dak was saying, potentially aligning himself with Blackbeard, or at the very least one of the Yonkos that will allow him to be able to get that screen time. Because we all know, like Dak was saying, we're going to see Law again. We're going to see some of the characters that have been, like Bonnie's, also aligned with Luffy. Like, these characters can have, and as well as the Revolutionary Army, these characters, we know they have this sense of alignment. Because we haven't gotten enough from Urouge, we just don't know where he falls in that spectrum. And so maybe in this arc, when NL comes back, we'll be able to answer that question. But until then, I'm honestly not sure. But I do think a lot of the heavy lifting of the final saga for Urouge will be done within this arc when he eventually shows up.
If Elbaph should be the arc for Urouge to come back into the story, I think we're all in agreement, like, that should be the case, right? Because it's like, again, we don't really know. Again, like, we could go to Lodestar depending on whatever happens with Scopper Gaban and the talk with him at the end of the arc, which I do presume that is going to happen once Elbaph is basically all taken care of. He may reveal that. He may reveal something else possibly that's there. Maybe like another poneglyph. I don't even know. But in terms of the other islands, I kind of like this though when it comes to One Piece, because I feel like for the longest of times, I want to say going back to maybe like Punk Hazard, we've kind of known the destination of where we're going to be going in the story, like after every single island. And this is like the first time we're actually going to feel that, where it's like after Elbaph, it's like, what's next, right? You can easily say, well, we can go into the final arc, okay, but what island is that? We don't really know whatsoever. So I think that's going to be really dope. And just because of that, and just how much time we may have left in the story to kind of really go through some things, exemplify and just like discuss them like as much detail from Oda's point of view, putting them into the chapters. I feel like this will be again like the perfect arc to do that, to have Urouge come into the story, have his own play, and then afterwards it could have that meaningful meaning, you know, in the later stages of the story. So yeah, I definitely feel like we're on the same page on that. But in regards to like other things with them, right, because there's like little tidbits and stuff I wanted to bring up to the both of you guys. I know Dak and I, we talked about it before previously with the mural and stuff, and you know, there was a part on the image, if you go look at the what I assume to be Zunisha, right, when we saw like the angel and stuff that's there and everything, right, do we think that's possibly a tie to the Birka angels based on the shape of the wings and everything, that maybe like his people had some kind of connection possibly with Zunisha and maybe the crime that was committed all the way back then? And you know, like they are like more pivotal to this because they also played a part, Zunisha basically having to go out and walk for about hundreds of years or so, and then we know like in recent times afterwards the like Birka was basically destroyed, they became like the fallen monk pirates, so there's like more significance there. So like, do you think that like Urouge, like in that sense, like even though he may be like the last of his people possibly that could be able to do those kind of stuff, is do you think that for him in the story there's gonna be like a big thing for him like attached to the Harley, and he's gonna be one of those individuals that becomes that ally in the great battle against Emu and the world government?
I definitely think so. Now go ahead, Dak.
Okay, I feel like we both have some ideas here.
You could just jump in at any time,
Yeah,
honestly,
if you're
bro.
ready to jump in.
Yeah, whoever fights for it.
So I completely agree that the angel on the mural is a sign for the Birkins, because we know that their wings are a lot bigger, and that's actually something that I brought up in my mural video, which again isn't out yet because I'm taking my good old time. But
when it does drop, we will be putting the link in that, so you guys can go check it out. So be sure to do
hell
that.
yeah, appreciate you. Yeah, hopefully it'll be out next weekend. But I do believe that's a Birkin, and I think the reason that it's down there by Zunisha, and more particularly down there by the Ark Noah, is because, do you guys remember when the Sea Kings were dragging the broken Noah back to like the area where Den is, and they're like, does it have a chance? Like, can it still sail? Well, it's been a long time, but it depends on the skills of that clan. Remember, we don't know who that clan is that could fix the Noah and presumably built the Noah, I would imagine. And the thing about the Birkins is because we know that since the moon city of Birka was high-tech, because there's two Birkas in One Piece, right?
Yes.
The one that got destroyed and then the one up on the moon. Since we know that they were really high-tech, I've always kind of presumed, oh, well, the Birkins are probably like really smart. You look at Haradas also, who is on Witheria. He's a Birkin, and he's really, really smart. And so I think the idea is that the Birkins helped build the Ark Noah way back then, and so that's why we see a Birkin down there by the Noah and with Zunisha. So now I don't know if that necessarily means that Urouge has to go help fix the Noah. I feel like Den can probably do it at this point because he's probably had some time now, but I don't know. I think that's where the legend's going to go. I don't know if that maybe means that he'll be a part of building another ship in the future of some kind. I mean, we are here with the Atom Tree, right? So if there was a place to learn about some really good shipbuilders, it's probably this arc. So that's where I'm at.
I think something that's going to be super cool is when we go into the Void Century flashback and we get the answer as to what those angelic things, which like we're talking about, most likely the Birkins, were within that entire situation that caused the punishment to be carried out, if they felt any sort of guilt. Because I've been thinking about the Lunarians and how Whitebeard referred to it as like the land of the gods, and as well as now with the Birkins, with the Skypians. It feels like we're starting to get to the point in the series where a lot of the races and a lot of the specifically on the winged side of things are really starting to become prevalent. And so I feel like once we get more insight into not just the Birkins, maybe what their purpose was, because a lot of the, specifically within the groups of individuals who are really steeped in something like a religion, as we're seeing in Elbaph, they're all according to like a one single purpose. So I wonder what the purpose of the Birkins was, and if it has any sort of connection to do with the punishment to Zunisha, as we're discussing here with the mural. But I think what's going to be super interesting in the final saga is going to be how Urouge can take his own play into things, because obviously he's 800 years into the future, and this is after the destruction of one of the Birkins, or of one of the Birkins. So it's going to be, I think, a really interesting thing to explore from a character standpoint, how he feels about it, how he feels about what happens to such an island, as Dak was breaking up earlier, potential vendetta against an NL. But I think allying himself and potentially being a part of the reconstruction of a Noah, and or the next time we see him potentially being with the Mokoma dukedom and Carrot over there on Zo would also be really interesting, because I feel like we need when all the major players start coming back, like the Vivs, the Momonosuke's, the Carrots, all the characters that we've met throughout the course of the journey. Carrot's definitely going to need I'm not going to say that the Minks can't hold their own, but the more that they could have potentially on their army is definitely going to help them out as well. And so them having a supernova as respected as the Mad Monk himself would probably be super dope, not just from a character standpoint, obviously, with his potential connection with Zo, but just to have that in terms of combat prowess as well would actually be a really good role for Urouge with Zunisha. I actually completely I forgot about that. That is such a fascinating possibility, and I'm excited for it, because we've been wondering what's going to happen with not just Zunisha when he eventually gets to the destination he's been trying to go towards, but also what Carrots and Wanda's and the Minks, what their eventual end game is going to be as well, and if it has a connection to Urouge and the Birkins, that would actually be really interesting.
There's just so much like untapped like potential in terms of like a history standpoint, because I feel like with every character in One Piece, it's like we've had like their moments in the story and stuff, and obviously like they'll have little jabs here and there where they tie into the bigger picture of it all. And Urouge, like, to set himself away from everybody else and make him feel different is that he could literally just be tied to that ancient history that's there. So there's like a lot regarding him that I'm so excited about and everything. And you know, when I brought up earlier like the resemblance and stuff with the or I should say the resemblance, but like when I brought up the thing with the mural and, you know, the elephant and stuff afterwards, Dak and I we talked about this before, but Recon, I don't know if you were aware about this thing. But when Oda was bringing up, like, you know, resemblances to different creatures and stuff or whatever in the SPSs, Urouge was supposed to be resemblance to an elephant. And I love how that's brought up, because then after, if they were asked like in the real world, like, you know, what setting that they would be in, what country or whatever, or like just continent, his was India. And we know that India, of course, has heavy ties when it comes to elephants. So I feel like with those little things, it's like, you know, people can easily go ahead and just say, like, you know, Oda could just go and tie things here and there and stuff, whatever. It's not like he conjured those thoughts and had them since like the beginning of the story. But like a lot of brilliant authors can find ways to be able to pick at something and it just works. You know, just that's just how we'll be able to work it out.
And Oda's one of those authors. The famous example is the Nakama scene with Vivi. That wasn't planned. Shanks wasn't planned to show up in Marineford, but he made it work.
Yeah, no, exactly.
He made it work, and I'm sure that could also happen with a character like Urouge as well. The supernova was thought of the week of, and look at where we are now. So yeah, it's like
absolutely, brother. And it's like, you know, the other stuff too that came up to mind as well, like, because I feel like the more, like, because we have to go off of like what we know in the story so far from either being SPSs or just appearances in the manga. I mean, I have like my own inklings of what his backstory is going to be like. You know, in terms of like him, like he has his hobbies, we know, of course, are love making, the alcohol. He loves to travel as well. So I mean, those are all things I expect, which are all well-rounded, right? It's like the things I do expect to see with him. Like we're gonna see that through his own backstory as well. We know the fact that if he wasn't a pirate, we know he'd be like a cabaret club manager. And for me and Recon, we know that so well with Yakuza. We go, you know, with Majima, with Kiryu, and everything. So it's like, how can we not get more connected than we already are to that character? And I feel like in some ways, those are things we're going to see in elements that's going to come to his own backstory. But in regards to that backstory, I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts for the both of you, Dak and Recon, in regards to, you know, how we've seen like in flashbacks, especially with Gold Roger and stuff, we had seen like different characters here and there that they met over their time. And obviously we saw the portion in Skypiea where they saw the poneglyph and everything. Well, depending on the history of that timeline and stuff, and depending on what age Urouge was during that period, do you think that there's a possibility that during that time, Urouge maybe had met Scholar Gaban, and that basically caused like some kind of influence within him to become the person that he is today? Like he saw like little things about him that he knew was himself, his true self, but didn't really get to go out and become that person until he met Gaban through the travels of Gold Roger in their time of finding, like, you know, the poneglyphs and then eventually finding the One Piece. What do you make of that? Because if he is a character that does come into this arc, I feel like that's one of those things of an interaction where like I kind of almost expect them to like know each other instead of like, oh cool, we, you know, this is the first time meeting. Like, what do you make of that?
That's so interesting. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I was literally about to say the same thing.
Yeah, that's so incredibly fascinating, lads. Like the Gaban potentially being a Rayleigh-esque figure for another one of the supernovas is something that is so incredibly cool to me. Not only that, But you look at the way he was swinging around that giant key, and it reminds me of whenever Urouge was fighting in Saga.
Think about it, yeah. Think about it, bro.
Like,
Yeah.
everything's starting to click.
Think about it.
It's-
Yeah,
yes.
the pencil, yeah.
Yo, I like that idea a lot, and I think it would, like, maybe Urouge. That would be a good opportunity for Urouge to come back, and or a way to reintroduce him into the story where he finds Gaban once again, and he's either trying to find out something else from his master, or because they are kind of similar. Now that you brought that up with the whole love thing,
It just,
And it's like-
you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's
Yeah.
like, you don't throw that into a character and just like, you know, and then all of a sudden we get Gaban that kind of has inklings of that in their own character. There's somehow, some way that Urouge must have got it from someone. And again, when we talk about religion, you know, priests and monks and stuff, there's a strict code that they always go and follow, but he's the outlier. He's the one that kind of just does his own thing. And it's like,
He's
how
Kevin
do you
Graham.
get that? Yes, that's what he is, man. Shout out to Trails.
Little
Daybreak 2 just came out recently, man. Go buy that. But
Yes,
in
sir.
regards to all that, it's like, that's where I'm like, my mind is at that point where it's like, for him to have all those thoughts, he had to have ran into somebody that goes against it completely. You don't just
True.
find the same person that has those things, but they just have that, whatever. It's someone that completely goes outside of everything that he ever knew. And the only person that could really do that for him that we know in canon fits all those things is Scopper Gaban. I would be very, very shocked if the first interaction, if we ever get Urouge in this arc, and they were to me, it's like, I remember you were a teenager and stuff, right? You didn't know your way in the world. You were bald, like you were like the Avatar and stuff, or whatever, right? And then I changed your life for the better or for the worse, because, you know, he became a fallen monk afterwards. So I think that would be really dope to see, like, in his eventual flashback and everything, because like we're gonna get like the main stuff in terms of the lore and everything, but to get down to the character, I think it's gonna be so pivotal, just because of the fact that when we saw with like all the other characters, with Law, with Bonnie, a lot of the impact came from the fact that they were kids. And I think with Urouge, it's going to be a big thing for a lot of people. Like, I would say like the older audience, I would say the ones that are on the adulthood side of things, that could be able to relate and understand a character like Urouge, because they were in that period of time where they weren't sure about themselves, or, you know, what walk of life they wanted to go through. And then something like that, a chance of meeting between the likes of Gaban and Urouge, could open their eyes for that. And I think for older readers like us, and I would say they'll be able to connect with those kind of characters, because it's like, not like as a kid, I can't relate with a lot of the stuff that's been going on, because like Luffy, I wasn't thrown into the damn jungle when I was a kid to be able to tussle my way and fight my way through things. But for Urouge, it's like there's like really personal things. I feel like you can do that, and it would be an interesting way for Oda to kind of break the mold of, you know, all these things happening to you as a kid make you as an adult, whereas you're on the cusp of adulthood, you don't know, but this is the thing that makes you after.
So you're saying that your Rouge could be like a Frankie or a Pedro, where remember how like Odin talked to Frankie whenever they went to Water 7, and Frankie kind of hyped up Pedro when they went to Zoe, right? Like they met these characters back then. And you know what's interesting about that? This is something I've brought up in a few different videos now, but if you go to the Roger flashback in the manga, the anime added extra scenes, so if you only watch the anime, it won't apply. But if you go read the manga, like Oda basically skipped all of the Skypiea stuff except the scene where they go to the poneglyph, right? Because like if you watch in the anime, like we see Gonfall and stuff like that, but that's not what happened in the manga. Like Roger went basically straight there, and we saw, you know, him like go to the poneglyph. I think they like had a discussion of like, where is it? And they would go and find it, whatever. But they barely show any of the Skypiea stuff. We don't get to see Roger like interact with other Skypieans. And I've always theorized like, well, that's probably because Roger has visited Skypiea at least once, if not multiple times. And Oda didn't want to show us that he had a connection with them or whatever, because it's going to get revealed in a major way. And so I think that could be this, where maybe Scopper and Roger, you know, maybe saved Skypiea or even saved Birka potentially way in the past. And so all of the, you know, Sky people started liking Roger and stuff. So that would actually make sense. And it could be that Urouge even looked up to Roger and Scopper for saving them back then, kind of like Luffy saved Skypiea from an L, right? It's just basically the same thing, but I don't know who it would have been back then. And you know, in Skypiea, in the Nolan flashback, what was one of the major plots there? That Nolan cut down all their trees.
Yes.
And then for Scopper, obviously we know he cut down a bunch of trees, right, on some island and left the whole
We got the
place
connection.
bare.
We got the connection.
So,
That's a cook.
Even Giant
Facts.
Jack. Remember Giant Jack fell, and that's what brought the bell back down.
That's
and
facts.
so And now that's why I've been saying the Adam Tree is falling down this arc, and Loki just
It
helped
really
me out
can,
big
yeah.
time.
Mhm.
I think that's what's happening this arc, or at least that's going to be like the plot, is that the Adam Tree is going to be in trouble. And I think it's because, you know, with Giant Jack and all the Skypiea connections, what's the real tale of Jack and the Giant Beanstalk? It's that he climbs the Giant Beanstalk, goes to the sky, and finds giants in the sky. And so I think for sure this whole cutting down tree thing will connect, you know, to a lot of stuff. And since that's why Nolan had to leave. That's why Calgara, you know, got mad at Nolan, was the tree thing. So yeah, I can definitely see Scopper, the tree cutter, you know, having something to do with Skypiea and Urouge for sure.
It's kind of crazy to me that I think about that too, because like, I mean, Recon and I, when we talk about like Elbaph prior to all this happening and stuff, I remember one of the things we talked about was the idea of like, if you go to the Sky Island at the top and stuff, that's exactly where, you know, if you have the giant beanstalk, whatever, you go up there, that's exactly where Loki and wherever all those people are and stuff. And I think now it makes more sense, let's say, if like Valhalla was that, because that would be like a thing where it opened up the clouds and then boom, like you see like the ghost of Harold or whatever it is, like almost like the Avatar state and all that, which would be a really dope thing to see. And I do think it's a very big possibility with the Heaven Realm.
I think that's where we're going to see Urouge as the Heaven Realm, because that's going to be like a burial place, you know, like Valhalla kind of thing. It might be like the Skypiea trees also, because I mean, it's at the top of a tree, right? It might be where the ancestors lay to rest. And I think that's where we're going to meet Urouge this arc, because he's a priest, right? He's like even praying for Kaido when he jumps off the island, because he thought, you know, because Kaido's trying to unalive himself, you know what I mean? And so he's like praying for him. So of course, Urouge the priest would be, you know, honoring the dead in the Heaven Realm. I think that's exactly where that's going for sure. So can't wait for that.
That's a fantastic point.
I'm so interested to see how that's going to happen too, because it's like obviously with the current situation right now, we're in, you know, Loki's like one chain away from being completely freed and putting Shamrock into the ground and, you know, re-christening him as like Shamrock and stuff, right? Because he's for everyone. But in the case though, for what's going to happen after in terms of, because I feel like we're at that point right now in the arc, obviously a big thing's going to end up happening and then people are going to be separated, or, you know, people are going to be in different sections and stuff. And it would be interesting to see if that's how Luffy and Urouge were to meet, because as we know of right now, they are the only supernovas who have yet to have a one-on-one conversation, talk, anything whatsoever. And it's gonna be interesting because this is gonna be Luffy interacting. Obviously, he's interacted with a lot of adults and stuff and everything, but to kind of get a different mindset that he understands somebody that, you know, has walked life, has had, you know, met different people and changed things, whatever. I feel like that will also be a big thing for Luffy's character, because at the end of the day, he's gonna be who he is and stuff. That's never gonna change. But to add like layers to him that maybe not talked about enough or going to be appreciated enough, I think he could get that also from Urouge, just to seeing all different walks of life. And you know, we talk about there with the graveyard and stuff, I just had this thing in my mind and stuff, because obviously we have yet to see Luffy go to Ace's grave, right? And obviously that's something I feel like is a moment we're all waiting to see happen. I feel like that it could be an opportune time. I don't know if there's something Oda would do, but I feel like to prep him for that, I feel like a conversation with Urouge regarding like, you know, just like, you know, religion or whatever it is, or just something about like, you know, life and death and everything. I feel like that would be nice to see some kind of conversation. So when he walks into that moment where he goes to Ace's grave, he's not gonna like get emotional stuff. He kind of has like a greater appreciation because of like, you know, the life and time that he spent with his brother, and despite the fact of how he went out, and to be able to keep that composure and just show that he has grown. I feel like having that conversation with Urouge could be able to do that for him, because he easily could have just gained everything he could have got from Jinbei, but there's still like little inklings there where, yeah, it may have bugged him here and there. Like we go back to Wano and, you know, he talked with Tama about, you know, letting him know Ace had died. We felt that, okay, maybe he was okay, but I maybe have to say to myself, with a lot of people, it's like that still is within us. We still have that hurt and pain. He's just doing a better job covering up on the surface. I feel like we're going to see that with the true emotion come out. And I feel like that moment there with Urouge could open up an opportunity to have something with Luffy's character I think we'll come to appreciate, because it's something that everyone has to deal with at some point in time. So yeah, I feel like that will actually be a really dope thing to see through Luffy possibly getting shot up all the way to Valhalla and just seeing this guy there just chilling and stuff. And it's like, yo, I already ran into Gaban and then the madness that he was on, and I'm about to be this guy that's gonna be on his own type of madness. But at least I'm gonna get something because he's one of my own, right? We're supernovas and all that. But in regards to Urouge, I want to ask the both of you, because obviously characters are inspired by different people and stuff through different ways of life. I think you guys have seen the stuff with Urouge being like based off Rasputin. I hope I could pronounce his name properly first time, but Grigorio Rasputin. I'm not gonna say that middle name because It's gonna be a tongue twister and a half. His whole thing, of course, him being this like Russian like mystic faith healer and everything, because of the role that he played during the time in the Russian Empire. He was kind of like someone that they thought was doing like little conspiracy theories and just causing like, you know, problems in the background, then led to his own demise after. Do you think that there's some stuff that you could see from the characters that Oda's taking inspiration from to Urouge's character that we could see there? Like, you see him being possibly like, you know, we talked about him possibly being maybe like something similar to Frankie as like maybe the helmsman, like who's gonna be rebuilding ships or whatever. But in this case, in scenario, he would be kind of like a doctor as well. Like we already have that with Law at the moment. We hold that, of course, with Chopper. But do we think that he's gonna have like his own different type of thing to him, or do you think that like he'll just take whatever little inspirations and then we'll find out the rest after from Oda?
Right before I answer that, or Dak answers that, I just have to add on to something you said earlier, Les, because I found it to be so fascinating. So when you were talking about the Heaven Realm with Urouge and Luffy specifically, I haven't been able to stop thinking about what Luffy's fear is now that we're in the middle of this nightmare world, and each and every single, and now we're in the middle of what was potentially going to be an exploration of each and every single Straw Hat sphere, which I think is a really interesting thing to explore. But Luffy's, I was bringing up in the chat, and we had this conversation during the live stream, is that Luffy's fear has to be losing the people closest to him, right? Yeah. Like that was the thing that caused him to almost break. And it took Jinbei saying, yo, you may have lost your brother, but you still have your Nakama. So now what does he fear most? Losing his Nakama. So what would be the best case scenario for Luffy before the final war, before one of them potentially dies? It is to have a conversation with someone like an Urouge who tells him, listen, I know you probably don't believe in any of this stuff, but if he puts you at ease, this is, and then maybe like shows him like the graves of King Harold or whatever, and all the legends of Elbaph, is like, these are the warriors of Elbaph, and they passed on, their memories live on, their legacy lives on, just like how Hero Luke told Chopper, like yo, a man never dies, he only dies when he's forgotten. And Urouge gives him that type of conversation. We could even explore what Urouge's fear is. But I feel like right now, with I think the focus being on all the Straw Hats and their fears, Urouge having that conversation with Luffy would be so incredible. Not just for Luffy, but for Urouge from a character exploration standpoint. So trust me when I say, when you were saying that, I lit up. I was like, this is awesome. Like, I would love to see something like that take place.
And let me just throw in one thing for you. I don't want to take too long. I just want to, because you're cooking right now, and I just want to throw in a little extra sauce right into the recipe here. Laz, you talked about Ace potentially, like the Graves thing. Have you ever noticed that Ace and Urouge have the same necklace?
They do, yeah. That was something I was like wondering about that and stuff, and like they met each other at some point in time, like when Ace is up in the Sky Islands, possibly.
Because you think about Wano, right? We met Yamato met Ace, and that was like an important thing. It was like a deep thing that oh wow, like Ace's friend is here. So if Urouge maybe met Ace, and what if he's able to tell Luffy, like, you know, Ace came, you know, during like what if Ace was there when Birka fell or something, and he's like, you know, like there could be a lot of deep stuff there that, you know, not only tells him about Ace, but also Ace in relation to even other people dying, and it accomplishes kind of what you're talking about, Coach. You know, it's like, Luffy's got to realize. I mean, he already knows this, but just like a reminder, or maybe even like a better example, that, you know, there's a lot of people put their lives on the line for this stuff. People make sacrifices. It's like what he heard from Vivi. It's like, hey, we're all putting our lives on the line. Like, that's part of the deal. Like, that's just how it works. And so I think getting that kind of reminder of, like, you know, like Luffy, like a lot of people have died, but we're hoping that you can come here and make it stop. You know, don't freak out. Like, you're no matter what happens, we're depending on you, kind of thing.
You want to know why that's so key to happen now? The biggest death flag in the middle of these 12 chapters of Elbaph so far is Shanks. We have seen nothing, nothing but, oh, Luffy's gonna meet Shanks again when Luffy meets Shanks again, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Normally when that happens, that is like pushing it in front of the reader. That's why I'm so interested in the Shanks thing right now, because it really does feel like, coming off of this arc, it's going to be a really big thing, regardless of whether it's Shanks and Shamrock or Shanks and Blackbeard, where we're all going to be like, is he really going to end up meeting Luffy again? And so if he truly has this conversation with Urouge, we're not only going to be looking out for the Straw Hats, what this arc has shown us is that Luffy values Shanks the same way Nami values Bellemere. And that goes like on the highest level. We've been treated to multiple different instances where he went Gear 4 just because Loki talked trash about Shanks. he was like, hold up, I ain't letting you do that. So he means a lot to him. So having the conversation with Urouge is also going to be big for him potentially having to deal with the grieving of losing somebody like Shanks, which is the number one thing for him. So it's like, that idea is so cool, man. And that idea is so immensely cool.
As I was hearing you guys just talking about it and stuff, I just had like a scene, like a what if just popped in my mind, and what if's gonna almost come turn into reality possibly if they decided to, going on the necklace and stuff, right? Because obviously we're gonna be seeing like, whenever we see Rouge, I expect them to like kind of be like either having healed up and stuff, or in like middle of prayer or whatever it is and everything. And I think it will be a really cool way to show that if there is a connection between Ace and Urouge, because obviously I know the necklace that Ace wears, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to be more in tribute to Dadan, because Dadan, I think there's like a connection thing to that as well and stuff. But it would be crazy to see that, like, you know, the necklace is because they met each other, and that's something to share like their bond, possibly, that they were once like brothers in arms and stuff and everything at one point. So that would be cool to show that, like, to Luffy, it's like there's another person that knew of Ace, that actually spent time with Ace, kind of like we saw with Yamato back in Wano. It's like this was his man's, you know, that they went out drinking and stuff. He learned life. I think that's also an idea that you could also make an argument that this is kind of where Ace got his way of life, even though it's like you saw as a kid, like he had that ideology or whatever. But I think for him, in terms of continuing on with life and going forward and everything, I think there's a chance that Urouge may have been the person that opened those doors for him. And I like that possibility being real, because obviously with the light novel that we had gotten, which incredible by the way, but I love the fact that there is still a lot of information that is purposely left out, and not everything is in there, for a chance of Oda to really go and delve into more of that stuff regarding Ace's history and everything through the manga, and allowing, like, you know, the chance to have something where there was a relationship, a friendship between Urouge and Ace, and, you know, Luffy just seeing this necklace and it's like, yo, my brother had something similar to this or whatever. It's like, oh, Porcus the Ace or whatever. It's like, yeah, that was my man's once upon a time. And it's like, you knew my brother, and it's just like, and you know how Luffy gets, right? The second you talk about family, that brother is gonna be all ears, locked in, ready to go. So I feel like that's also gonna lead to a camaraderie between the two of them, between Luffy and Urouge, based on what relationship that the man had at the time with Ace. So I think that would be definitely an amazing thing to happen. And going back on what I was saying too, in terms of preparing Luffy for that moment where he does see the grave of Ace and just telling him, yo, I'm good. I thought I wasn't good at the start and stuff, but I've had my people. I met the right people to kind of change my mindset and stuff and get me there, and that's something we'll love to see, man.
That's gonna be such a powerful scene, dude.
It's gonna be, dude. And I don't know, like, crazy. Is Urouge gonna be there? Like, I would love to see if Urouge would be there, just because, like, if they were that close on Friends and stuff, you would imagine, like, Yamato being, like, in the weights and stuff, or whatever. Like, because I feel like the main person's gonna be Luffy, and probably Sabo, I would say, just to be there for ASL and stuff, but just absolutely in the background, just there, like, damn, man, like, yo, those are mans, yo, like.
Lads, you know how I'm picturing it? It's it's that scene in Hamel with Reen and them, and it's just all of them paying respect. Everyone's silent, and it's just the whole cast paying respect to Ace. Dude. Like, you know how beautiful that would be? Like, oh, bro, come on.
And then you just, I don't know how they'll pull it off. If you give me the Spirit of Ace for like 2 seconds, just hit the peace sign and out, bro. I'll take that any day of the week. But but for Dakabay, not be aware, man. Yo, Trails is the greatest series of all time, man. So that's all you gotta know, man. Great video game series, man. But it is a moment though I'm definitely gonna be looking forward to, and hopefully Urouge will have some kind of tie to that as well, because I feel like once we get him with Luffy after, there's gonna be something there. You could argue that he's had some connection with most of the supernovas already. I would say there's a couple that hasn't been as big, but obviously, of course, we've seen what the role's been like in the story so far. Hasn't been that, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the two.
Earlier, you asked us about like Rasputin, or however you say his name, right?
Yeah,
Grigori,
yeah, big Grig.
Well, we never. I don't think any of us ever answered that, and I do have an answer, but I want to say something else first. So don't let me forget, because I have a really good answer.
Got you.
In regards to that. So the thing about Ace that I love that you brought up was the Ace novel. So you know, a little bit self-serving, but I do have a theory about Master Deuce being the man marked by flames, which I still stand by.
Yeah.
But regardless of whether that's true or not, I do want to bring that up, because a big factor that happened early in Elbaph that ties to Mass Deuce correctly is that Louis Arnault was mentioned, right?
Yes.
And he wrote Brag Men, and in the Ace novel, Deuce was heavily inspired by Brag Men.
True.
He brought it up. That was like a big, like he loves Louis Arnault. It's like his favorite book. He's like obsessed with it. He brought up many different things from it, including that you can like char the wood that you use to build a ship, and that'll make it stronger. And if you char wood, it makes it black, and that's part of a big reason why I think he's going to be the man marked by flames. He also has Ace's flame dial, so there's the flame part. But anyways, I love what you're talking about with all this Ace stuff, because for one thing, I think Ace definitely visited Elbaph at some point. I think that's going to be a lock. I think Ace probably visited all the major islands. Like, he went to Wano, obviously, right? So I think there is going to be lore here in regards to Ace, and I think the fact we had Louis Arnault mentioned early is then going to make this even hit even more, because everything you said with Urouge and, you know, the graveyard and like paying respects and all that stuff, if Masked Deuce was there too to chime in and be like, hey, you know, I was Ace's Zoro. I knew him, you know, almost better than you, Luffy. Like, all, like, you know, they're not gonna have that debate, but, you know, he's gonna know him differently. He's gonna know him in a totally different way. And it's like, you know, I respected him, like I loved him. You know, I was torn up when he died too. Like, I understand your pain, but I'm telling you, he would want X, Y, and Z. You know, like here's the way Ace would be thinking about this, Luffy. Like, for him to add the extra context where Urouge can be like, yeah, Ace is great because he came and saved me this one time, but then Deuce can come in and be like, oh yeah, during all of his journeys, here's all these other things he did. And then Luffy, you know, it's just that I feel like he would be able to add so much extra context to make that moment hit like 10 times as hard, right? So
yeah,
I'm praying that Masked Deuce pulls up.
One of the recent chapters, I believe it was either the most recent chapter or the one before that, where they specifically talked about the two biggest threats to the Atom Tree are lightning and fire.
Yes,
so
sir.
Someone like Ace pulling up would add a different type of incentive to that. Like, somebody pulls up the Marimara no Mi, but he has a good heart. So naturally, they would fear this individual. And Ace would probably feel that because he's like, all right, I'm Roger's son. Everyone's always hated me anyway. But he's probably coming in here and everybody's like, no, I fear your power. I fear what you can potentially do. And so maybe that could be good characterization for Ace, and being like, no, I don't hate any of you guys. The same way that Elbaph's all been about all that too, about like the difference in classes and hatred and being kind to one another. Specifically, the difference between the old warriors and the new warriors and how they approach things. But I think Ace being potentially the fire to Loki's lightning in that conversation is actually so cool and would tie what you're talking about together for sure.
Oh, dude, I love that, because I think that fire and lightning comment is very, very important. And you mentioned Enel being part of that, or even Loki now with Ragnar. Yeah. But I think what Oda's going for is there's going to be like multiple examples, like
Big Mom too.
Exactly,
that's like the primary one I always keep thinking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. But then in L and Ace, like, you take the fire and lightning Logia, like that would.
Yep.
And to be clear, I think I mentioned this, but just to be extra clear, Deuce has a flame dial with Ace's fire in it, so like he can bring the Marimara no Mi fire with him. True. And from like the implication from the novel is like there's like a lot of fire in it, and it's like really strong. He's like, there's no fire that burns hotter than this one. Like, he like hypes it up. And so to have the Logias represented like that, because Sabo could come as well, but I don't know if that'll necessarily happen yet. But you could have Ace's fire there, which would just hit on a deeper level anyway, I think. But then Big Mom could be an example. And now, even with Loki, Ragnar might be able to do both, because we saw he brought down a lightning strike and then a fire started. So he's kind of both of them in the same thing. So I think Oda's going multi-layered with that for sure. And Ace would be perfect.
I'm just thinking in the back of my head right now, too, as you're just mentioning this as well. Because, like, obviously, like, the fire, obviously, there would be a certain amount, unless, like, he put everything possible into that dial. Because, you know, just see Max Deuce hit, like a flame emperor, I don't know, just out of nowhere. So I would lose, bro. I would lose my butt. And then Luffy's like, Naruto, I can do something here, like year 5, you know, and put more respect on my boy and stuff. But
or real quick, another idea is, what if Elbaph catches fire and he's able to like suck the fire back up? Because you think about Mother Carmel. Remember, everything was on fire, and then she made Pandora, and she's like, oh, it's because of the sun god. And I think that could be another option. Or maybe he does use all of it, and then he like reuses it, so then Ace's dial is then used to save Elbaph or something. There's like a lot of
and another possibility as well is we're all expecting Sabo eventually to make his appearance in order to discuss that Vivi is also a D, right? He needs to deliver that information to Luffy, and so if that happens at the end of this arc, he comes in, uses the Marimara no Mi, and he's like, yo, the spirit of Ace still lives on. He's the one that saves them from the fire, brings the fire back to him. That's another possibility as well.
Speaking on the D pause, is there a chance, Ball, that we could see that Urouge may be tied to the clan of D? Because obviously right now, as we know currently in the story, and I could be wrong to check my notes after, but in regards to like the characters that we know that have the initial D in their name, he would be the first one, I believe, of the Skypeans or like the Sky races to have the confirmed initial in their name. Do you think that like just to further tie in the fact that he is connected to all this in the story is that he has the name, and then what exactly like would be his full name possibly, right? Because I just doubt like his parents just came through and just like, bet your name's called Ben and that's all you're gonna be, whatever, right? So it's like there's gonna be some more to it, like a Rouge D something, whatever, right? So I mean, what do like our chances of that happening?
Well, we already know what his name is. It's Ma D Monk Urouge.
You're right. What
Right.
am I saying? What am
That's
I? What am I saying? Urouge is just whatever, bro. He got it, man. Ma D Monk, bro. My
Yeah,
dog.
but real talk, I do think Urouge will have the initial D. I'm a big believer that there's probably some Skypeans that have it, but they just like lost it at some point or just stopped using it, right?
I agree.
One of my biggest examples, shout out Randy Troy for this, by the way. He did an excellent
Shout out
video
Randy.
about Luffy's lineage. I don't know if you guys saw it, but one of the things he brought up
I don't know.
are the monkey family connections to some of the main Skypeans. So you think about Calgara. This is one of my favorite examples. So for one thing, Calgara and Dragon have the same voice actor. They both have tattoos on their faces. And then during Calgara's introduction, what did he do? Threw a giant ball on a chain at a ship. When we met Garp, what did Garp do to us? Threw a giant ball on a chain at us.
That's a cook.
And then also there's that like elder of Skypiea that wears a dog mask, just like Garp wears a dog mask.
Ooh.
And then on the golden bell, there is a monkey with a straw hat on it.
Oh,
so,
God.
Brother.
So when
That's a
you
cook.
stack all those things together, I'm like, all right, so Luffy's related to those guys. And then what Randy brought up, which I totally agree with, is Seto. Do you remember Seto from Skypiea? I think that was his name.
Yeah.
The guy, it's like who Nolan finds first, who has the disease, and he's kind of like the next Calgara, basically. Well, he looks just like Luffy. He looks like a Skypean 400 years ago.
He does,
Luffy,
though. He does.
Right?
Yeah.
His face looks very similar, right? So all those things together, I'm like, okay, so that's probably where Luffy's family, or like one side of his family originates. Probably his dad's side, probably is from the Skypeans. And then his mom's side, we don't have to get into all this, but I think that's going to be a celestial dragon thing.
Yeah, I'm so.
But regardless, yeah, I'm a big believer. But yeah, I think they probably do have the initial D. There's like a lot of Skypeans with it, but they probably just lost it at some point or don't know it. Like Vivi doesn't know it or didn't know it, or she still doesn't, but you know what I mean.
Even then with the initial D and stuff, right? Because obviously we're of the assumption that a lot of the characters like currently in time in the story don't know what that initial means. Like we still don't know. We've had our own like reasons to think of it and stuff. But could you imagine just like in conversation, Urouge just says a word with the letter D in it, and we come to find out afterwards it's like that's what the initial is. Like obviously I would assume when we learn the voice sentry and all that, we're gonna find that reveal. But if there was like a pretense of like, or just being like, this is one character that he may be tied to them, tied to Skypeans and stuff, and I would assume that some of them would be aware of that and like the name and stuff, because I think it's more so for the people that are like in like the current world and stuff on land and stuff that don't know like what's going on, because so much of history was kind of like wiped away and everything. But there was a reason why a lot of like the automatas and stuff and just the name, now we know that there's the different moons, the Birkas and stuff and everything at the top and all that may know more about that history and just like that little lore that's just been missing on the story. It would be crazy if Urouge held on to this kind of information and knew about it, and it's like all it took was just waiting for the right time, right place to meet the right person that could just go off and tell us there. So it goes to show like that he's literally a blank canvas that could literally give us the final answers that we need going into the last arc of the story.
I'm going to contradict something I said earlier, because I said I definitely think Urouge has the initial D, and I still would not be surprised by that. But I do have some counter evidence, which I think is just worth bringing up. You remember in the mural in I think it was the Second World Harley text? So yeah, I guess it wasn't the. I always think of those as the same thing, but obviously they're two different things.
Yeah.
But regardless, the Harley text, the Second World, it says, "Those of the half moon dreamed, those of the full moon dreamed." The half moon are probably the D clan, because obviously circle cut in half D. Well, who are the full moon people? The people from the moon. The Skypeans, the Birkans, the Shandorians.
Right.
And so then he might be a full moon person, not a half moon person, which means he's not a D member. So I could see both, but even in that context, I'm like, whenever they're listed back to back, I'm like, well, they're probably like
equal level
allies.
Importance.
It doesn't barely makes a difference at that point.
The counter argument to that even more so, Dak, because you remember what Gaban was saying, that they've been mixing races for as long as time as can tell. So it's very likely that even with not being fully full moon, half D, whatever it may be, there's still a chance that, like, if an ancient kingdom, they could have had like I don't even know what I don't even want to think about it because I might lose the channel if I even say half the things on my mind. But it just
Urouge is 3/4 of a moon.
Can you imagine saying that, bro?
His mom is half is like the will of D. His dad is the full moon.
Yeah, bro.
Like, yeah,
you imagine just saying that
like,
kind of stuff? It's like, yo, like what the heck are you? And then it makes sense for like how he is the way he is and everything too, right? Even with all that being said, because I know we just talked about Mass Deuce right now and possibly him being the man marked by flame, so we can kind of rule out Urouge, even though despite the fact that his arms, he does have the markings and everything. But in terms of the actual power that we were told, like this person rides like this Air Force One like type ship, all black and everything, and like, you know, he's able to cause like whirlpools and all that. So like that doesn't feel it would be connected to Urouge, because there's someone that may also be tied to the government and stuff. Which, Dak, would you imagine that would probably be Mass Deuce? Because we know, based on the Dr. Stone version that they did of the Ace novel, and if I remember Recon, because I think you told me you read it before, but they have something there where like Morgan's had talked before with Mass Deuce, and obviously, of course, we know the world newspaper, the economic and stuff, that's tied to the world government. They push out the news and all that. So do you think that he may be that person that's riding around in this ship and stuff, causing whirlpools, and also has the last poneglyph that we need to get to Lafto?
So a big part of that theory is, you know, Mass Deuce also ties to Whitebeard very closely, because he was on Whitebeard's ship along with Ace, and we don't obviously know, you know, where the man marked by flames person is now or whatever, but we do know where they got the poneglyph from, and that's Fishman Island. And Whitebeard had Fishman Island as his territory for a really long time. And so my thought process on it is that, you know, right before Marineford, probably after Blackbeard killed Thatch, I would imagine, Whitebeard's like, all right, well, we got to move that thing, because like Blackbeard knows it's down there. He's dangerous. Like I might be dying at Marineford. Like I can't just let you guys, you know, my friends in danger. We got to move that thing. And so that's pretty much been my mindset, is that he planned this whole thing. And then as far as Mass Deuce being tied to the government, yeah, like the best, you know, I guess excuse for that is the Morgans thing, because Morgans is like, hey, why don't you write stories for me? And Deuce is basically like, well, all I want to do is follow Luffy and Sabo and report on them. And so you could reason that now, like, his reports that he's giving Morgans, maybe like he's also giving them to the government in some way, or Morgans is giving them to the government, so he might be tied to them in that way potentially. But I do think he made the ship that is making the whirlpools because he also made the Striker ship that Ace used, like the thing that he powered with his fire. He made that from like random materials on an island when they first met. Like he's like a super genius. And so I'm like, okay, so all you got to do is go make a bigger, better version where like you use the dial to, you know, make like some turbines that point downward to make some whirlpools or whatever, right? Like if you have this dial that can, you know, and you're super smart, like you can build something like that. Like what, you know, who's gonna stop you? So
true that.
I'm like also even thinking about it too with Deuce as well, because like, you know, trying to tie him in with Urouge, possibly if Urouge had a connection with Ace and stuff, you would imagine that he would have also known people from the crew and stuff. So like, because obviously with the novel, it's like it has its own explanation of how things went about and everything, and obviously Oda can kind of go about it his own way in the manga, because, you know, his canon will always be the King Cold and stuff of it and everything. So they could do something in a scenario that I'm thinking it's like, if after Ace is passing, obviously everyone's out doing their own thing at the time and stuff, that Urouge maybe ran into Mass Deuce and then like had that moment that we expect them to have with Luffy, like then that's gonna be more so like when they're on the top and everything, was able to help him out. So in parallel to what Jinbei did for Luffy, Urouge might have done something like that for Mass Deuce, just from prior to the time that they met together, then after the losing Ace.
I love that.
I think that would be a really cool thing. And then not to mention, even just for Urouge having that conversation, but for Mass Deuce to have that conversation with Luffy, because, you know, these are two people that lost someone so important to them, a brother that they consider, you know, like for what we know, like we don't know the name for Mass Deuce. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation on what it could be. That's like a hidden name and all that. I've liked the idea that maybe he's tied possibly to Louis or not, you know, in terms of like the writing and stuff. I mean, that would be like a really cool parallel there. But just to have two individuals who went through a moment of loss and then be able to tell them like, yo, this is how I dealt with it, this is how we overcame it, and it's like, but we have that appreciation at the end of the day for Ace, and you have those two people to kind of thank for that, which are Jinbei and of course with Urouge. So yeah, there's like a lot of like, I feel like when you have like that big party and stuff, whatever ends up happening at the end of Elbaph, all those people kind of connecting and stuff over that one person, in that case would be Ace, would just be really dope to see. So like Urouge having conversations with like Luffy, with Jinbei and all of them and stuff, would be definitely dope. And I really do hope though Deuce would come through in this arc, because again, if he does have the last row poneglyph, it does open up the story where it's like we're on that final avenue, we're gonna go straight to the end of the story from there. So that would be dope. But yeah, for Urouge, man, it's like there's just so much excitement that comes to his character and just what he has to offer to the story, and knowing that Oda is waiting until right now at this moment in time to possibly do that, because there's not much time left in the story. You know, there's not much time. We have Elbaph and then whatever happens in the rest of the final saga. So a lot to look forward to. So let's make a prediction right now. If we had to assume when we're going to expect Urouge to show up, and we presume it's going to be happening in Elbaph, what section of the arc do we think it's going to happen? For me, I'm going to go and say in like whatever happens after this portion right here with Loki, because I do expect we're going to get a big separation to really stretch the arc out and kind of like go through more things as we get to reunite with everybody afterwards. So I would probably say in the next, like, we're right now on chapter 1143 by the time we come back from the break, and I got to figure out when the next volume ends, so I'll have something on the screen to tell you when the next volume does end, on what chapter. I will say around then. So probably the next like less than 5-10 chapters, I think we're gonna see Urouge come up in the story. But I'll start with Dak. What do you think?
There was a point earlier where you were talking about, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said, you know, like, we're gonna meet Urouge soon, like, you know, like Oda's been waiting for now.
Yeah.
And I was literally gonna chime in and say, Oda might be drawing his face as we speak.
After the break week, I mean, yes,
he could be prepping 1143 as we speak, drawing Urouge's face now. You know, like, genuinely. Or if it's not, you know, he's usually a couple chapters ahead, so maybe he's working on 1144 at this point. Whatever he's he could be drawing Urouge's face right now. That's how I feel. Literally any week, I don't like have a script prepared, but I am mentally prepared to make a video on that guy right there.
Yes,
I'm ready. Like, any week now. So I think, I mean, I do probably agree that, you know, with Loki activating, waking up, and all these nightmares popping up, I think we probably do have like a little bit of stuff to happen to, like you said, split up the crew or just quiet things down a little bit. It feels like we're kind of in the same moment as Wano whenever Luffy fought Kaido the first time, and like the Boro breath hit the mountain and we didn't know if everyone died for like a chapter and stuff. We feel in the same moment, so I do think we have to get past this craziness for a little bit. And then that's when Urouge is gonna plop in for sure. That's how I'm feeling.
Most definitely. Recon, what are you saying?
I'm gonna go parlay 1150, but you know what I mean. I'm gonna go parlay 1150, but I think at most 1160. Okay. So like somewhere, it depends on how long Oda wants to go. Like Dak was saying with this particular stretch of chapters, and when that finishes calming down, or at the very end in the midst of all that chaos, Urouge pops up. So we'll see.
I hope they get past this, you know.
Honestly,
like, praying for the kids.
That's how a chapter ends.
That's how I'm saying.
We just see
if it ends like that, I mean, I'll be mad because I'll be like, Oda, you can't do it to me. You can't end with Urouge. You have to start with him and give me a full chapter.
Bro,
he's in a 3-week break after that chapter.
No.
It'd be a crazy cliffhanger to go with if you decided doing that way, Dak. Because imagine like Luffy gets punched up all the way to the top of the heaven realm and stuff, and you get like a double spread, kind of like Recon, thinking like in Bleach, you know how when it, like Kubo does that thing where he has like the double spread, one word to like say a Bankai or whatever, and the only thing we see there is Namu, and then like we'll be back in a month. I'll be so heated, bro, if he did something like that, bro. Just Namu, he wakes up and it's like, bro, he's right next to Urouge. I'll be absolutely mad in this man.
Let's go. I'd be so hyped.
But yeah, I think for prediction wise for me, like I said, I'm gonna assume by the time the next volume does end, so within the next like 5 or so chapters or so, I would imagine that's going to take, because again, I know things will probably speed up a little bit once Loki's out the chain, and things are going to keep on going from there. So it'll be really interesting to see like where that goes into, but I think in the next like 5 to 10, honestly, this arc, it feels like it does need that little extra something, despite how amazing it's already been, and it feels like he is the last calling card that we need to throw in here to get this arc really going from there.
Dak brought up Wano earlier, and that's a good comparison of like where we're at, like with the Boro breath coming out. And right after that, Luffy met Kid in the prison, and Kid became like one of the other major stepping stones within the arc, and so that's really when it felt like Wano started in regards to getting the party together to go to Onigashima. It feels like after all this chaos finishes and Luffy ends up wherever in the Flying Flanards he ends up, him meeting up with Urouge there. Like you just said, if he really gets knocked all the way up to the Heaven Realm, and Luffy's by himself, what better way than to be with Urouge, right?
Just like looking at the scene happening before my eyes right now, just like Luffy, Urouge, and then like all of, like the Avatar like Elbaphian kings and queens and whatever. It's just like what are we doing here, Coach? Like, did I make it all the way to the top? Am I gone? Like,
and what's crazy, I don't even know if we talked about this, but if that is like a graveyard up there and Urouge is up there,
yeah,
like a lot of those people who were dead died like during the Void Century and stuff, right? Because like giants, they live so long, and so he's gonna be like, hey, all these people died in a massive war to try to save the world, and they're waiting for you to come, Luffy. And then he's like, well, I'm not that guy. And then of course, Luffy's never gonna accept that. But regardless, he could build that hype, like my religion is about you. Like imagine that. Like I've been a priest preaching about you, Luffy.
This entire
like,
time,
that would just hit so hard. Like all these people died waiting for you. That's my religion. Like that would, but then Luffy would just deadpan and be like, well, I'm not a god, so
could you imagine up there in the Heaven Realm on a tree? There's a drawing like similar to the one that we got last chapter with like Nika up there, and
Joy Boy's body, or
it's like a drawing of it, right? And Urouge is like this is the individual that I've been preaching about. Does it look familiar? Luffy's like, no, it doesn't look like me. I don't know who that is. And then he draws like a stick figure next to it. It's like, that's me. That's what I look like. But I think that'd be so cool too, because I think in the Heaven Realm we are going to get some heavy Void Century lore, and maybe through like a mural-esque hieroglyphic thing or whatever. But I definitely think that's going to be some really deep stuff. So, and if Urouge knows about any of that, that's going to be the icing on the cake, man.
It was crazy, Recon, because you brought up the part of the scripture thing, like on the tree and stuff, right? And Dak, I think you might know where I'm about to go with this, because we talked about before when Frankie was reading the mural, how those 3 specific images that we talked about, and it was like, are they just random characters, possibly, whatever? So Recon, think of this, right? Those specific people, because then it shows Nika afterwards, are the most important. Like, we're talking like his OGs, his best friends, right? So Poseidon, the bear, and I forgot the last one. I don't know if it was supposed to be like Emeth and Emeth and stuff too as well. So those are like the most important people. Like when you think back to the Void Century, and I guess you could say like your second in command, third in command, like that, like to Kingdom or something, right? That's how I would look at it for Nika and Joy Boy and them. It's like that's like those are the most important people to them and stuff. So I think like going on to that scripture thing, just to kind of tie into that, I think that would be really dope if that was their friends and stuff. But going on to like in the Heaven Realm and stuff and everything, because I do feel like there's gonna be a lot of correlations and ties to Skypiea, obviously, of course, with the Urouge, and just the history and stuff that's there. But in terms of moments, because when we talk about some of the most insane, crazy, and just look back on just phenomenal moments that happened in One Piece, we talk about the one with Luffy ringing the bell and stuff, and everybody from down in Cricket and them are just like, hey man, like it's up there, right? Can we get a Gear 5 version of that moment in Elbaph, where you see the people like of Valhalla and stuff or whatever are seeing their goat, their man of like they were worshiping all that, and even especially for Urouge, like you're saying, that like you just sees him, it's like, oh my god, bro, like that's the guy, and it's like there's all that history comes and hits him at that moment in time. I think would make for one of the most emotional scenes, because it's like when you get into the Void Century, then you understand that pain because you wasn't there. But for those people that are going through and reliving it, bro, oh my god, that would be cinema.
I think that's very possible, Laz, because one of the biggest theories I have going into this arc, and especially now after all of this, is that I think we're gonna get the first world flashback here. And I think the second world Void Century flashback comes whenever we get to the One Piece, because I think that's the one that keys and ties everything together. The first world flashback is the creation of the One Piece universe, all of the things that go and tie into like the Lunarians, the Birkins, the all of the things that felt like they were so far out, and of course it's going to introduce us to the first Nika. And so when we find out how that came to a close, and of course, that flashback's going to end in a cliffhanger that'll allow us to see when things continue in the Void Century. But for us to get that legendary panel, which you're saying, after seeing Nika defeated and seeing Luffy come back all those 1,000 years later and being like, yo, I'm still here, I'm still doing my thing. Like, that'd be peak, dude.
Bro.
That'd be peak.
Yo, just hearing like a crowd just going, Nika. Like just like a wrestling crowd or something, that'd be wild.
They're hitting the drums.
Joy Boy, bro.
Drums.
Yo, it would be a crazy scene I can think of in my head. But like, imagine like the Dum Tata whatever, right? That's hitting up in the sky, and you just get rain. And think about like how significant this would be, because imagine like the Atom Tree is on fire, and something happens where the point where it could possibly fall down this arc, as we were saying earlier, attack. and that's what helps like kind of keep it in place. And it's not it's just not just the figure of Rain, but it's the tears of the people that are so joy at Joy Boy coming back in the form of Luffy helping save history or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just one of those things like Oda-ism. That's something that I could see Oda do so much, and it's like, yeah, that would absolutely beast, man. It's like a why, or even like, let's say like where it hits like other parts in the world and stuff, or just starts randomly raining and stuff. It's like, yo, that man's back, bro, on this earth, bro. Joy Boy, he out here, bro. But it's Monkey D, so. Yeah. But oh my god,
that'd be really cool if Vivi pulls up too, and that happened, because obviously Vivi with the rain was already a big point, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And that would be a conversation I would love to actually see even too with Urouge and maybe even with Vivi, because obviously it would be like, you know, the Alabastians, and then of course with the Skypians and stuff, just kind of getting two different points of history and everything, right? Because obviously from what Robin was able to learn back in the day and stuff, or, you know, going back to Alabasta and learning the location of Poseidon and stuff, there's certain histories that are over there, but also when you think about from Vivi's family, there's certain things that they know, and then of course what Urouge and them know. So that'll be like a really cool thing to see happen if it were to happen there.
So you asked about the potential Rasputin connection, right?
Yeah.
And so as you mentioned, he was a faith healer, which I'm not going to pretend to know a whole lot about that, but just building off that context, you know, it seems like he's a doctor, like a, you know, like a preacher doctor combo kind of thing, right? Well, think about Noland. He visited Skypiea, and he was a botanist, which isn't technically a doctor, but he used that to treat people, right? That was the entire point while he was there. He did, yeah. But the thing is his entire situation with Calgara was a faith versus science debate, right? Where Noland was on the side of science, saying like, hey, you know, people have studied this and we figured out the cure. I can help you. Like, you know, all these scientists spent their whole lives learning about this and figuring out this cure. You know, like, don't trample over their discoveries. Like, we're here to help you, kind of thing. While Calgara was all on the faith side. And so I think by having, you know, this potential Rasputin connection with like a faith healer type situation, maybe Urouge is going to be a little bit of both, which would make sense because Calgara was obviously a Skypian, and with Urouge probably being a Birkin. And so it might be the situation that he is kind of like a faith healer, where maybe he is trying to heal people like Nolan did, but by using faith like Calgara did, right? So I think he might be a combo of both. And so I think that fits in really well with what you were saying with Ace and all that kind of stuff, right? Where maybe, you know, he can give some solace to Luffy about, you know, losing people and how to handle that and how to respect them and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that Rasputin thing matters for sure.
Yeah,
I think just to add on to that, Dak, I think something that could be very interesting is because he is the fallen monk, is exploring how potentially his mindset has shifted from how it was whenever he was like a regular monk, and then fallen into becoming the way that he is right now. Because I think what we could explore is how he maybe shifted from which individual he chose to worship and or preach about. And that could even lead into a thing with the faith healer being not necessarily a literal thing, but a sort of metaphorical thing of, no, I'm going to restore the people's faith in what I believe in, or in things of that nature, like heal their hearts and things like that, which would go into what we're talking about with Ace and Luffy. So, and not necessarily like a literal thing with like actually healing someone, but being able to talk to them and reach like the depths of their hearts and souls. So I feel like that could most certainly be the faith healer connection.
And that could be why he said Blackbeard would be the eye of the storm for a while, because going back to the Ace connection, remember Blackbeard beat Ace. Like, the reason that Ace ended up dying is because Blackbeard beat him and captured him and took him to Marineford and all that stuff, right? So I actually really like that, because, you know, looking at that context, like after Ace died, if he's like, oh, well, Blackbeard's gonna be the eye of the storm, it could be that kind of thing where like, hey, Blackbeard's out there taking out strong, important people, you know, like that he's gonna be the eye of the storm because, you know, Urouge is someone who understands the importance of faith and people dying and, you know, how to respect them and all that stuff. So he could be thinking like, all right, well, this Blackbeard guy is probably one of the biggest people in the way of people accepting the faith that I'm preaching, because he's taking out the people instead of liberating or saving them, which is what Nika's supposed to do. So that'd be an interesting connection to think of in that way, where Blackbeard is kind of the antithesis to what he's preaching, and that's why he's like, dang, all right, this guy's gonna be serious.
And it's like, you know, it's even crazy when I think back to like the stuff with Rasputin, like, not when I say think back, like I don't have the notes like right here in front of me and stuff, but in terms of like the main thing that they were basically like famous for and stuff was the fact of Nicholas II when he went from, I think it was the Lions of Russia over to Belarus, which left Rasputin in the possession of Empress Alexandra to have under his own influence in terms of like, you know, political things that were going on in the country of Russia at the time. And that basically changed something after, where eventually led to his own demise by Nicholas. And then one of the big things about him when he actually had died was he died from drowning. That was one of the things from the autopsy. So I don't know if that's something that's going to tie into maybe either Urouge being the one where we kind of know his fate at the end of the story. And maybe that's something that could also tie into his flashback, that maybe that because of his lovemaking, traveling, and alcoholism that he was into, he kind of like manipulated, not intentionally, but maybe kind of changed the lives of a lot of different like monks in training and stuff, and eventually caused like the youth to go through some kind of moment of time where they just kind of rebelled and something bad happened, and that led to his banishment. Which again, going to what we were talking about earlier with the fallen monk thing, Dak, that maybe potentially that's how he got his moniker as a fallen monk, is that because he committed some kind of taboo that made him be basically removed completely from his people. So I think that would be something of interest to see happen. But the drowning thing, to me, is so interesting because we know that he has some kind of devil fruit that relates to karma, and we only know like one named attack for it, but what exactly is something that, you know, someone is beaten to a point where they can enhance double the strength. Like, you imagine like someone like Luffy, for example, hits him with like an attacking gear 5 that would normally kill somebody else. Urouge tanks that and now has double that type of power to unleash onto somebody. Like, you would think in most case scenarios, many times out of 10, they're winning a fight if they can get that other shot off. So it's like, I'm really curious, like, if it's not something that's been like, you know, he was experimented on as a punishment, a crime, or something that he, because of what he did, that's something he has to live with, that karma, which again would be very fitting to like a potential storyline that goes with his character and everything. But the drowning thing, I could see it whether that's going to be his way of going out, what they tried to do to him initially before he was able to escape through some kind of means, or because we're going with the stuff with Blackbeard, because I've always been a big believer in it. I think that's how he goes out in the story. I do think that he goes out by drowning.
Me too.
Yes. And if that is exactly the way it's going to go for, I think because of that meeting with Urouge, even if, let's say, if it's something where like he doesn't tell him, yo, just make him drown, you'll win, whatever. But I think just because of meeting that character that's inspired because of Rasputin will be a cool way of like, kind of like you have to read in between the lines, is in the background work, at least at that moment where Luffy, how he defeats Blackbeard is by making him drown. And he doesn't get that idea without meeting the person that was inspired by a character that went out by drowning in Rasputin in Urouge.
Right.
Yeah. So man. I don't know if I should shout out to Rasputin, because I mean he was kind of crazy back then and stuff. I don't know. You know what I mean? Is that a bad PR move? You let me know down in the comments below if that is the case.
No, we didn't talk a whole lot about his fruit, but you brought it up there, the potential karma fruit.
Let's talk on it.
And I do want to just bring that up real quick, because I do think one really important connection in regards to the potential karma fruit, which, like you said, we don't actually know the name yet. That's just kind of what we presume it is.
Yeah.
But the thing that I love about it is the connection to Kuma, because Kuma was also a priest, so there's that connection. He was also a big, bulky guy, maybe even a buccaneer. I actually do think that Urouge is a Birkin / buccaneer connection, right? Yeah. So he might be both. But then also you think about what Kuma did with his powers. He took people's pain out and absorbed it himself. That's almost like the reverse of Urouge in a way, right?
Great point.
Because he can take pain, but then it flips into strength. So he's not taking other people's pain, but he's able to flip pain from it. But then Kuma is kind of just like, well, you know, I'm super selfless. I'm just gonna take that pain myself, and I don't get anything for it other than just helping you, you know. But Urouge, on the other hand, he does get a boost for taking that pain, where Kuma would be bedridden for like a week or whatever. He could only do it like once a week, take everyone's pain or whatever. Well, I just think that's a really cool parallel there, and it might fall into the fallen monk stuff that you were kind of talking about. Maybe he started drinking a little bit too much, you know, going out and partying a little bit too much, a couple like too many one-night stands, and then he maybe got kicked out of his order or whatever. You know, because he wasn't like pure anymore, so that's why he's the fallen monk. And it would be kind of cool where Kuma, like the most pure person in the entire story, arguably, is over here taking pain and getting nothing for it. But then the fallen monk, maybe that's what it's representative of, is he's like, you know, I kind of realized that this religion, you know, I definitely like Nika, but some of the stuff was BS. You know, maybe he like some stuff he wasn't with. So that's why he started drinking and started doing these kind of taboo things. And that's why he also gets the karma powers. Like, yeah, I take pain just like Kuma does, but I'm not happy getting nothing for it. And that could be the lesson here is Urouge is in the middle of someone like Kuma and then maybe like an evil person where he does love Nika, but he's okay with the vices as well.
Yeah.
Right. Great point.
Dude, I was just thinking that also too as well, like, you know, can you imagine, like, because again, we're going to extend like Urouge's like flashback, or even just have more stuff to add to it, because depending on against the timeline of all these things kind of adding up and everything, right? Because it was about exactly what, a year or two ago or so in the story when Kuma was actually like, you know, he was obviously going through the whole transformation stuff into a cyborg, but like when he was out kind of traversing the world and stuff and everything at the time with the revolutionaries, or when he was by himself when they labeled him the tyrants and all that. Could there have been a possibility in a time in the story where Urouge and Kuma have met, in a sense of like where Kuma, like, let's say either he got shot up all the way to where Birka was maybe before his destruction, or let's say vice versa, where it's like, you know, Urouge came down and then he met on an island afterwards with Kuma, and then they had some kind of conversation, like a connection because of religion and all that. So I mean, that's something I could see maybe possibly happening, because, and I like those things too from Oda, because it's like he doesn't have to give you every single thing that ends up happening, because there's a chance that in someone else's story that element can come in and factor into another character's whole story and stuff. So I mean, again, like we talk about how, like, you know, how Oda's able to piece these things together. He's been doing that for such a long time. It just takes a really creative brain to go and make those kind of connections, even if they had no intentions of actually happening, but he finds ways and they'll make sense afterwards. So I really am hoping now for the fact that Kuma and Urouge have had some kind of meeting in the story. That would be great. Just to have a religion off for one chapter, I think would just be so cool to see.
Conqueror's hockey clash.
You know what I'm saying, bro?
They're praying, just
that's right,
bro.
The sky split,
bro. Can you imagine, like, these guys have been praying?
Netero and Meruem,
bro. Dude, can you imagine like Kuzan and Akainu, like when they had like their 10-day of fighting and stuff? It's like these mans had like I don't know, like the length for Ramadan or whatever, but they had like a time period where all they did is just pray. They stand in the same place and just pray the entire time. People just walking by like, what are these guys doing? It's like, nah, man, they were one with God right now, man. So that would be a really cool moment to see happen there. I mean, I really am hoping that happens with Kuma and Urouge. That would be so dope, though.
Yeah. Well, and how many years ago did the Revolutionary Army officially start, aka when Kuma joined? Was that 8 years ago?
I could also just edit this in afterwards, but let me just double check that right now, actually, for the timeline and stuff. So this would be exactly, let's see, history, some point in time. I see the earliest right here being 22 years. So this is like several months after Ohara. So where we're in the story, I would assume this is 22 years since when the revolutionaries were first made, because we know they were the freedom fighters, and then
and then Guinea was taken, or Ginny, however you say it, was taken, I think 12 years ago or something. I'm just trying to make sure that there was enough time where he was in the Revolutionary Army before Birka was destroyed, because that would be the ultimate connection. I think.
Yeah, Birka, if I'm not mistaken, was 8 years. I think it was.
It was.
Yeah, it was Birka.
Yep. So, because if there was enough time, then you could even reason that maybe even before Birka got destroyed, the Revolutionary Army went there to like try to help, right, or something. And that would, I think, be the most natural connection where they could maybe meet, and you know, and maybe that could even be where Urouge is like, all right, you know what, screw this religion thing. Like, if my whole island's gonna get destroyed when I worshipped him and nothing happened, then screw it. Like,
good point.
You know, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, I'll still pray because I like Nika, but I'm not following all these other rules that we made up. Like, screw that, you know, because obviously it doesn't matter.
Bro, I just had an epiphany right now because I just read something and it's like, oh my god, Oda could really do this, actually. So, as we know with King Harold, we know that one of the big things about his character is like he wanted to open up like trading borders and stuff afterwards with all the worlds and everything, right? And a thing just came to mind right now that the real life Birka, it was supposed to be one of the most important trade centers in Scandinavia during the Viking Age.
Yep.
True.
Yep.
We know.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
100%. But Birka and the Giants were working together.
Bro, I'm telling you right now, that's crazy how that just came to. Oh my god. So like, they had some kind of ties to a point where they met up with the people of the sky and stuff or whatever. So like, oh man.
Have you heard the theory that the like, you know, that one branch of the tree that fell down from a giant lightning strike in Elbaph? Have you heard the theory that that's from when Birka got destroyed?
I did not hear that. No.
Yeah, so like whenever lightning strike and L used to destroy Birka, because we don't actually know where Birka is. There was a line in Skypiea where I think it was one of the White Berets, I think, maybe McKinley, said, "Oh, Birka is a city that used to be southwest of here or southeast or something," and it gave the feeling that it's close by, because if something's on the other side of the planet, you wouldn't be like, "Oh, it's southeast." It's like you would just say it's on the other side of the planet. So I've always felt like Birka was close to Skypiea, but we don't actually know that. So it is possible that Birka was, above Elbaph back in the day before it got destroyed. And so maybe, or it could just move. That's the other thing. Think about what area it moves. It doesn't have to be in one place. And so maybe it was above Elbaph at some point, and an L destroyed it, and that lightning strike came, down all the way and broke off one of the branches, and that's where, that legend started. I think that would be a pretty cool way to tie it together, honestly.
Dude. Yo, this man Oda is a wizard, bro. I think there's no other way to put it.
He's a madman.
How does he find ways of making these things happen, bro? What a genius, bro. Oh my God, Urouge. What a character, bro. There's so much stuff that I would love to talk about with him, man. But honestly, I'm really curious to know what everyone would think down in the comments below with this one, guys, because this was a phenomenal discussion. I feel like this won't be the last time we will be talking about this character, and especially if he does show up in this arc, we're probably going to come back on here and just glaze over him, as we rightfully should.
Yes,
but
sir.
Dak, Recon, thank you so much for coming through, guys. Make sure to check out the channels down in the description below, as well with Dak's video coming up very soon on the mural. We'll have that linked somewhere over here and stuff, we'll do that and everything. So definitely go and check that out. Like the video if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel, see what everything goes on here. And again, make sure to check out Recon's channel, check out with Dak, as well as on Redacted as well, where he does a lot more of the discussions for One Piece. And with that all being said, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Commodore last signing off. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, take care.
Going crazy, yeah, we going crazy.